There is a reason, beloved soul, why your spirit has been feeling heavier lately, why the peace you once felt in stillness has now been replaced with a subtle unrest that follows you into your sleep, into your prayers, into your most sacred moments with God. And Archangel Michael speaks now not to frighten you, but to awaken you to the truth that has been hidden in plain sight, cloaked in false kindness, masked with familiarity, and wrapped in a disguise so gentle that even your discernment began to question itself. But heaven does not question what it sees, and heaven has seen this person, this harmless friend, you've let too close, not for who they appear to be, but for who they truly are in spirit. And though their words may sound sweet and their gestures appear generous, behind the veil of their smile is a current of spiritual depletion, an unspoken jealousy, a hidden agenda tied not to your elevation, but to your spiritual erosion. And Archangel Michael warns you now with urgency. The soul you believe is safest may be the very one creating invisible leaks in your spirit, the one whose presence pulls your light inward until you doubt your own fire, the one whose eyes never quite rejoice when you rejoice, but cleverly mask their envy behind shallow praise and diluted encouragement. And you have been asking why you feel so tired even after rest, why your clarity has dimmed even after hours of prayer, why the excitement you used to feel in God's promises has been replaced with low-burning confusion and self-doubt. And this is why. Because this friend is not feeding your soul. They are feeding on it, not by accident, but by attachment, because your spirit carries something divine, something radiant, something born from your long nights of crying out to heaven. And they see it, they sense it, and though they may not know how to articulate it, they're drawn to you not out of love, but out of a deep spiritual hunger to consume what they have not cultivated within themselves. And this isn't about malice on the surface. It's about a spiritual misalignment that has turned your connection into a conduit for fatigue, for fear, for distraction. And Michael is here now to tear the veil and expose the true nature of what's been happening behind the smiles and conversations and shared secrets. Because your calling is too sacred to be drained by someone who hasn't asked for your anointing, but has been bathing in its overflow. And yes, God calls us to love, but not to self-destruction. And your soul has been too generous with someone who doesn't know how to hold it without dimming it, too forgiving with someone who doesn't truly repent, too open with someone who misuses your vulnerability as a map to your weakness. And Michael says this person has studied you, learned your language, mirrored your passions, echoed your convictions not to grow with you, but to blend in and disguise their own spiritual stagnancy in the reflection of your growth. And heaven cannot remain silent because the cost of your peace is too high, and you've already paid too much of it at the altar of false friendship. And while this person may never say a cruel word to your face, their spirit has been in contradiction with yours from the beginning. A quiet storm beneath the surface that slowly erodes your trust in yourself, that slowly reroutes your prayers from boldness to begging. And heaven has watched long enough. And now the trumpet sounds in the spirit. A divine intervention meant to bring you clarity so sharp it cannot be denied, even if your heart resists. Because this is the season of spiritual refinement, of pruning, of sacred elevation, and not everyone who started with you is allowed to continue the journey forward. and not because they are evil, but because their presence will become your delay. And God is too invested in your promise to allow that. So Archangel Michael has been dispatched with divine authority to reveal, to convict, and to protect not just your present, but your future, and you will begin to see it now. The moments where their words no longer feel aligned, the times when you feel drained after a conversation that should have been encouraging, the nudges from your spirit that you've been brushing off as paranoia, but are actually promptings from heaven. And soon the truth will rise, not in chaos, but in confirmation, not in argument, but in awakening. And when it does, you must choose obedience over comfort, discernment over familiarity, protection over people pleasing, because God is about to reroute your circle to match your calling. And some doors, especially ones dressed as harmless friendships, must close so that new gates can open, gates that bring life, not exhaustion, gates that pour into you as much as you pour out. And Michael reminds you, this is not betrayal. It is breakthrough disguised as separation. And you must let go of what drains you if you want to rise into what restores you. You may wonder why God would allow such a person so close to your soul, why heaven didn't intervene sooner, why a friend who laughed with you, shared your sacred spaces, and perhaps even prayed beside you could simultaneously be a source of spiritual exhaustion. And the answer, beloved, is layered in wisdom, because not every battle is meant to be avoided. Some are assignments. And this friendship was a mirror, not just to reveal them, but to reveal you, your boundaries, your discernment, your unhealed places where love without limits became your blind spot. And Archangel Michael speaks with urgency, not to make you bitter, but to make you wise, because God has always known the weight of your heart, the beauty of your empathy, the softness that others mistake for weakness. But now is not the season for softness without strength. It is the time of awakening. And this friendship has been your spiritual training ground, an invisible test to see if you will protect your purpose with the same passion you protect people. Because heaven cannot send you into higher callings weighed down by old patterns of self-sacrifice masked as compassion. And Michael shows you this. Every time you ignored the unease in your spirit around this person, your light dimmed just a little more, your focus wavered, your clarity fogged over with doubt not born from your spirit, but theirs. And what makes this so dangerous is not that they intended harm, but that they never intended healing either. They sat close not to uplift, but to absorb, to siphon joy, to quietly mimic your divine peace while never cultivating their own. And you began to notice, didn't you, that when you shared revelations, they responded with subtle detours. When you celebrated breakthroughs, they offered half-hearted support dressed as spiritual advice. And you chalked it up to stress, to misunderstanding, to human flaws. Because your heart doesn't rush to judgment, but heaven never misjudges. And now it is sounding the alarm to your soul. Wake up, because your next level requires a cleaner atmosphere. And this person's spirit is laced with residue that hinders more than it helps. And though they may not curse you with their mouth, they curse your energy with doubt, with silent comparison, with the kind of spiritual dissonance that doesn't make noise, but does make damage. And Michael is revealing it all because your time is too short and your calling too urgent to carry burdens disguised as buddies. And you must see now how your sleep has changed, how your dreams have been cluttered, how you've woken up more anxious. and how every plan you've shared with them begins to feel delayed, resisted, or strangely off track. And this isn't coincidence, it is spiritual contradiction. And their presence in your life has created an open door that allows unseen resistance to slip in like fog, subtle but consuming. And heaven says, you must shut that door, not in hatred, not in vengeance, but in obedience. Because what God is about to release over your life will require you to be surrounded only by those who multiply peace, not those who feed off your fire until only embers remain. And you may feel guilty because your heart is pure, but purity without protection is a target. And this is your moment of maturity to know that some friendships are assignments with expiration dates. And the more you delay releasing them, the more you delay your elevation. And God has already lined up divine replacements, soul alignments, kingdom friendships that will breathe life into your purpose and never ask you to shrink to keep them comfortable. And yes, this may hurt because goodbyes always do, even when they're necessary. But this goodbye will be holy, not cruel, intentional, not impulsive. And when you finally obey, you will feel the shift. Your sleep will return, your thoughts will sharpen, your creativity will come alive again, and your prayers will regain power because the leak has been sealed. And Michael wants you to understand this. What you've been calling loyalty has been spiritual sabotage in disguise, and heaven has been watching patiently, waiting for the moment you would be ready to stop carrying what I never asked you to carry. And here it is, the moment where your spirit begins to breathe again, where the drain stops and the rain of clarity begins. And soon you will look back and not feel anger, but revelation, the understanding that even the draining seasons were allowed to build your discernment, that even the counterfeit connection was used by God to fortify your discernment, to birth your boundaries, to raise your standard for what spiritual companionship truly looks like. And when the dust settles, you will not only forgive, you will thank me. Not because of the pain, but because of the wisdom at birth, because of the strength it uncovered in you. And because now, finally, your spirit has room to rise. You have felt it in your spirit, haven't you? The way your joy has become quieter around them. The way your light has flickered just slightly in their presence, as if something invisible in the room tugs at the edge of your energy like a shadow, sitting just outside the frame of your awareness. And now heaven is unveiling what your soul has been whispering all along. This person's access to your life is costing you something sacred. And while they may not speak against you, their spirit is in contradiction with your assignment. And Archangel Michael has come not just with warning, but with a divine spotlight to illuminate what has been hiding beneath layers of polite conversations, familiar laughter, and shared memories. Because discernment doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And you have been brushing off those whispers out of loyalty, out of love, out of the kind of hope that wants to believe the best in others. But this is not the time for emotional leniency. This is the time for spiritual precision. And the truth is this: not everyone who claps for you is rooting for your rise, and not everyone who hugs you wishes you well in secret. And though this friend may appear harmless, heaven sees the heart, and heaven sees the spiritual weight you carry, your light, your anointing, your purpose. And it has attracted not only favor, but also leeches. And this friend is one of them, not overtly malicious, but subtly draining, a spirit that attaches itself to yours in quiet competition, masking envy and concern, and bitterness and banter. And you've noticed it, haven't you? The way your breakthroughs feel muted around them, the way your plans feel suddenly foggy after you share them, the way your excitement dims, not because of circumstances, but because their energy casts a spiritual shadow over your flame. And Michael says this cannot continue. Not if you're going where God is sending you. Not if you want to walk in the fullness of the power already stirring within you. Because elevation requires separation, not out of arrogance, but alignment and some. Friendships are forged for a season, not a lifetime. And though the soul grieves the pruning, the spirit rejoices, for the pruning is proof of promise. And now the spirit is showing you with divine clarity. The confusion you felt wasn't weakness. It was discernment try to rise. The tension in your stomach when they smiled at your success wasn't paranoia. It was a signal from heaven warning you of spiritual misalignment. And your dreams, they've been shifting too, haven't they? Strange symbols, heavy atmospheres, faces you trust appearing twisted, veiled, half-lit. And that is not just subconscious noise. It is heaven's language trying to speak what your conscious mind refuses to fully confront. And now, no more delay, no more excuses wrapped in compassion, because your obedience to protect your peace is not disloyalty. It's stewardship, and Michael stands with his sword drawn, not to destroy people, but to sever soul ties that are contaminating your calling, to guard your gate, to shield your destiny. And he says this: it is time to remove their voice from the echo chamber of your spirit, because every word spoken from spiritual contradiction creates confusion. Every touch from an unclean connection transfers weight, and every silent comparison builds a wall of spiritual interference between you and the clarity God is trying to bring. And yes, they might act confused when you begin to pull back. They might even play the victim, accusing you of changing, of abandoning them. But you must remember, your loyalty belongs to the Lord. And if He is calling you to create space, then that space is sacred, and heaven will fill it with divine replacements. Friendships built on kingdom honor, mutual intercession, and true spiritual compatibility, not convenience, not codependency, and surely not competition. And once they're gone, once the weight lifts, once your spirit breathes again, you'll realize how much of your clarity was being suffocated in silence. And how much brighter your inner world becomes when your soul is no longer being siphoned by a presence you once called harmless. And Michael urges you, don't wait for a crisis to make the cut. Don't wait for betrayal to validate the separation. Don't wait for spiritual collapse to enforce boundaries. Move now, because delay is still disobedience when heaven has already spoken. And this is your moment, not just of clarity, but of courage, the courage to trust what your spirit knows, even if your emotions still want to hold on, the courage to choose purpose over people, peace over people pleasing, and obedience over nostalgia, because your next season is too pure to be polluted by secret saboteurs disguised as supporters. And now you know, now you see, now you must act. And now, beloved soul, Archangel Michael brings you to the final unveiling, not just of the person who's been draining you, but of the true power that has been quietly forming within you while you endured it. Because heaven does not only expose darkness to shield you from harm, but also to remind you who you truly are when you no longer carry the weight of people never meant to follow you into your promise. And now that your eyes are open, now that the veil is lifted, you must understand that what you are about to walk into requires a different level of spiritual insulation, because your destiny is no longer about surviving the pain of yesterday, but stewarding the blessing of what comes next. And though your heart may still ache with questions, why they came, why they hid their true self, why God allowed you to love them, why the laughter was real, but the spirit was wrong, heaven wants you to know this. Nothing was wasted, not one conversation, not one tear, not one prayer you made for them in secret while they quietly absorbed your light without ever intending to protect it. Because what they took from you did not destroy you, it refined you. And now the oil that drips from your soul is thicker, purer, wiser. Not because they were worthy of your suffering, but because your obedience made space for transformation. And Michael wants you to feel what's shifting now, not just in your mind, but in your atmosphere, in your sleep, in your spirit, because the moment you let go of what heaven told you to release, the divine realm begins to move in acceleration. Suddenly the delays begin to unravel. Suddenly your prayers begin to carry more weight. Suddenly the fog that hovered over your vision begins to part like a curtain, revealing the next stage of your calling. And you begin to walk not in defense, but in dominion, no longer apologizing for your light, no longer shrinking for the comfort of others, no longer diluting your truth to protect those who never protected. Your peace, because your light was never too much. It was too costly for those who never intended to match it. And Michael is commanding your heart to be firm now, not cold, but firm, not bitter, but unshakable, because what is coming to you in the next season will not survive if you continue the cycle of entertaining emotional parasites who masquerade as well-wishers. And this is your divine graduation, your spiritual reset, the moment where heaven sees you not as someone recovering from emotional exhaustion, but as someone fully aware of your authority. And if you're wondering why the warfare intensified before this realization, it's because the enemy always attacks when he senses an awakening. And he used a familiar face to deliver unfamiliar fatigue. But what he didn't know is that God had already marked the moment when your spirit would say, enough, and that moment is now. And as you release the counterfeit, the spiritual drain will cease, the peace will return, the joy will roar again, and your discernment will no longer whisper, but roar with the clarity of heaven itself. And there's something else, something Michael is revealing now, that this test wasn't just about removing one person. It was about teaching you how to never allow this level of infiltration again, how to guard your spirit like the sacred temple it is, how to trust the warnings of your soul, even when the evidence is not yet visible, and how to understand that divine wisdom does not always come with physical proof. It comes with the language of peace, of tension, of dreams, of promptings that feel too quiet to explain but too loud to ignore. And you must promise heaven this now, that you will never again silence your discernment to preserve a connection that threatens your calling, because your mission is holy and your energy is heaven's currency. And every moment spent in misalignment is a moment stolen from the lives you're meant to touch, the purpose you're meant to live, the freedom you're meant to walk in. And now Michael is placing something into your spirit, a promise, that as you close the door to this spiritually draining friendship, a window will open so suddenly, so divinely, that the winds of change will knock the breath from your chest, because divine partnerships are already forming in the background. Intercessors who will love you in truth, not in envy. Kingdom allies who will pray you through valleys instead of watching you fall in silence. And in the coming days, you will receive a sign, a sudden clarity, a message, a shift, a dream that will confirm you made the right decision. And it will feel like the clouds parting, like your soul exhaling after holding its breath for too long. And when it does, remember this moment, this message, this divine warning that didn't come to punish you, but to prepare you, because heaven doesn't just protect you from battles, it trains you through them. And now you are no longer the version of you who tolerated spiritual compromise out of fear of being alone. Now you are becoming the version of you who understands that divine loneliness is sometimes heaven's strategy to reset your circle, to realign your spirit, to prepare you for partnerships that don't drain, but pour. And if you stay obedient, if you honor this shift, what's ahead will not only redeem what was lost, but reward you with more than you knew to ask for. Because heaven saw your silent strength, your inner war, your tear-stained prayers. And Michael is declaring now, your reward is set, your release has been authorized, and your future has already shifted.